High-Tech Computer, or HTC, was a well-known smartphone brand. It made everything from the very first Android phone to the ever-popular HTC One M8 and even Google's first phone, the Google Nexus One. But then, what really happened? Why was HTC taken out of the smartphone picture? Where did it go? Is it still alive? But to answer all these questions, the fundamental question to be asked is, what really happened to HTC? HTC had a really great time making smartphones, and especially their HTC Dream, which was the world's first Android smartphone, was a big deal back in 2008 when it actually released, because many people were searching for the actual competitor to the iPhone. While some other companies like Samsung and LG were coming up with their own first-party, well, not so great solutions for the software, so this was a really appreciable move. Then they made Windows phones for a while, but we all know how that went. But their collaboration continuously with Beats and Google really did bring them up the chart. And at their peak, the HTC One M7 and the M8, HTC sure did love a lot of marketplace in the smartphone market. But what HTC did was something really bad. So the most anticipated sequel to the HTC One M7 and the M8, the M9, was literally the same phone as the M7 and the M8. Just a little bit of a refresh specs, but poor battery life as well. So that was a big concern, considering the fact that everybody awaited something big from HTC after such a grandeur success. And don't get me wrong, recycling designs isn't really bad, like from some other company that I know. But the whole point is that at that time, the industry wasn't ready for a standard yet. And there was a lot to innovate, even back in 2014. So when you take that into account, and also the fact that HTC also released an One M9 Plus, but it was kind of like a Chinese exclusive, so it really didn't reach the global markets, HTC did lose some grip. But their final years were actually painful to look at. Seriously, like, I would actually trade in my Galaxy S10e for an HTC One M8 with a better battery, better camera, and updated specs, like at least a Snapdragon 778G. Like, it's that good. Like, the speakers, even though they sound a bit tinny, I really like them. I really like the overall aesthetic of this really curved unibody aluminum metal design. But then, what HTC did after their Titanic success is a big confusion, considering the fact that after that clearly flawed M1, M9, they launched a really confusing phone called the HTC U Ultra, which had that secondary screen like the LG V20 and did not have a headphone jack and a really bad battery and camera. And it was thrown out by critics, considering the fact that it was too early to actually remove the headphone jack. HTC wasn't Apple at that time, it was already losing market share with the One M9. It can be worse, right? And the HTC U Ultra arrives. So you might think after this it's a big landslide, they're making really bad phones over again, or they're actually making good phones, it's just that nobody's starting to notice them, and they shut down like some other company I know. But it's not all bad, alright? So they did make their last flagship phone, the HTC 10, which was a pretty decent phone, but it wasn't anything revolutionary, considering the fact that it was just another flagship, like any other flagship at that time. So HTC's last flagship didn't really make any sales, so what did they do instead? Well, Google was actually planning on opening up their new Pixel lineup of phones made exclusively by Google, although some parts of it were made by HTC and LG respectively, unlike the Nexus series, which was something like Samsung Nexus or like HTC Nexus or something like that. This was out and out Google branded phones. So when it needed to do that, and when it saw HTC going down the hill, so it made a $1.1 billion acquisition on over 2,000 engineers of HTC, along with non-exclusive license to HTC's intellectual property as well, bringing in the almost closure of HTC, considering the fact that they were the pioneers that actually brought HTC to such a success peak. And then the Pixel phones arrive and HTC keeps going down. But you might think at this point, alright, HTC's done, HTC's doomed for that, close the curtains, RIP HTC, put on that tagline and say you miss them. Well, actually no. So smartphone business is actually one of the things that HTC actually makes. Yes, smartphones was the reason that HTC actually entered the market. But after realizing that there was a whole other scope after smartphones, and after seeing its HTC Vive VR headset become a huge hit, they started investing a lot in VR, and HTC still exists as a company, making VR equipment and even a blockchain smartphone, which unsurprisingly you might have seen did not make any headlines because we all know how that ended up as well, because of multiple scams by companies that were too familiar to work with. So when you saw all of this coming together, it's not like HTC's done. It's not a case where what happened to LG. They were trotting a dead horse. They couldn't make anything anymore. They were suffocated by their losses and they had to close the curtains without any buyer for their mobile division. This is more of the fact that Pixel actually bought out, at least the Google Pixel actually bought out HTC's most smartphone business, and they do make smartphones, especially their U12 and their U12. What's that name again? Why do these companies have so bad? So just for some clearance, they actually even partnered up with Valve as well for the Vive series. So what really happened to HTC smartphone business? As for now, they only sell 2 smartphones on their website at least. The U12 and the U12 Plus, the U12 Life, whatever. These 2 smartphones are 2 years old by default, 3 years old, and they are the best value. They just listed on, even though HTC did release a smartphone in 2020 called the U25G, it really doesn't look like HTC wants to come back into the really extremely competitive smartphone market. And it's more of like HTC's bidding bye-bye to the smartphone market. It did that already years ago. Why am I talking about that? But the whole point is that HTC as a company is something what happened to LG. It was going on losses, it's still going on losses, except for the fact that part of HTC's smartphone business was bought out by Google, and another part is rotting to death. So HTC doesn't even care about its smartphones anymore, and who knows if it actually comes back. But for the good news, again, just like LG, HTC is really doing good with its VR lineup and also its networking equipment, which is coming out as a pretty surprise. So moral of the story is that you should give customers what they didn't think they actually wanted, instead of giving customers what they really don't want, like a useless screen or useless same rebranded device or China exclusivity. Just don't do that. Yeah.